Warning, this isn't as much of a critique of Amnesia the Bunker as it is a springboard for me to speak about many different subjective topics on particular design concepts, genres, and themes found in video games. Amnesia is a horror franchise, and horror is probably the most subjective genre that there is. Consequently, many of the reasons this game does not work for me is the reason why it works for other people. So basically, whenever I make a definitive statement in this video, imagine a load-bearing SpongeBob gif of me going, "In my opinion!" The thing that really sucks is I was looking forward to this game immensely. I'm a fan of Amnesia. I've played every game in the series. I've liked every game in the series, which is kind of saying something. Anyways, you know my stance, that's my disclaimer. Now let's jump right in with my most emotional take on the subject. Amnesia the Bunker isn't scary. It was terrifying at first, don't get me wrong. You hear things in the walls, and it's hard to tell if it's the monster or the sound of war penetrating inside. But things go downhill from there. The reason why I don't find the bunker scary didn't really show up until I started interacting with the monster in a meaningful way. See, at the very beginning, I would hide from the monster. Under beds, in closets, behind barrels. I've been taught to do this for every Amnesia game. This didn't feel any different. But
Now the main problem area is up here. All of this going on up here is what's causing me the most physical discomfort. It's like a visceral reaction of discontent coming from this area. This area is not good either. I hate this, but I'm mainly worried about this.
I can shoot this motherfucker. I maybe went through a quarter of the game shivering in my fucking boots because I never had a good angle on the guy, but the moment he tried charging at me and I fucking shot him, he ran away. Something changed when that happened. Suddenly all the grenades I was hoarding weren't door openers, they were monster exploders. There's like 1,700 explosive barrels in this bunker. I just shot them when the monster walked nearby. He pisses his pants and runs off. Now, more seriously, this is interesting. Something in my brain stopped me from being afraid the moment I was able to fight back. This isn't a unique scenario for the bunker. I've had this happen in other games, expressly Resident Evil games. This specific subgenre of survival horror where you have a weapon and ammo is a resource used to fight back has never had me consistently afraid, ever. I like Resident Evil, just to make it clear, but they're not horror games to me. They're not even in the same realm of horror games. I think these kinds of survival horror games have consistently made me more pissed off than they've had me afraid. Now, I should be specific in mentioning that I'm talking about Resident Evil 2 Remake when I talk about Resident Evil. I've played a little bit of Resident Evil 4, the original, not the remake, and I like that game too so far, but it's not scary. But on the topic of being able to fight back, there's something that changes in me when I know I can step out of hiding and beat the monster into submission even for just a little bit. Your main recourse in every other Amnesia game has been running or hiding. That was it. You could never fight back. With the addition of grenades, gas, fire, guns, that entire playstyle feels like I'm holding back. Hiding from the monster is now no longer the optimal solution. Beating his fucking ass is. I know for some people, the concept of dwindling resources, which, yes, you can use to fight back now, but will be gone forever, is scary. For some reason it's not for me, but I know it is for others. The problem I had is that my resources were always ever dwindling, but never gone. I always seemed to have at least 2 or 3 grenades. My revolver always had at least 1 bullet. I was never forced into a situation where hiding was the best option because I never ran out of the ability to fight back. 2 moments. There were 2 moments where I think I was genuinely scared in the bunker. I don't think an entire horror game with a runtime of about 5 hours having only 2 scary moments is a good thing, but hey, they were there. The first moment was when I was crawling around the officers' quarters dealing with booby traps, terrified I was making noise and hearing the monster in the walls. This happened before I was able to see and fight him. For the moment that happened after I started to routinely grenade the guy if he committed the sin of appearing on my screen was the chapel. It was one of the few times that hiding felt like the best option. That area in general is also dog shit, but that moment was genuinely scary. I still think the officers' quarters were scarier, but that was because I was psyching myself out more than anything else. The point I'm trying to make is that for someone like me, the reason the Amnesia series was terrifying is because you were dealing with what felt like unstoppable foes, and the only way to survive was to run or hide. When you add the ability to fight back, the foes no longer become unstoppable, they become beatable. And this implicit realization ruins the scare factor. I can't be scared of a monster I can beat. It's how I feel, I can't really change it, but I wish I could. I fucking love Frictional, I love this series, I even loved Penumbra. The only games they've made that I haven't played have been Penumbra Requiem, which I've heard bad things about, so I don't think I'm ever going to play it, and Soma. I only haven't played it because I've seen so many videos about it that the game's been ruined for me. For a long time, Amnesia has been my ace in the hole. They consistently put out games which either have amazing stories, are terrifying, or both. Is it real? Oh my god, it's real! Most of the horror usually comes out because of this hide-and-seek style of gameplay, which, for the most part, is pretty central to the series. Amnesia the Bunker does many things differently, to the point where it doesn't feel like an Amnesia game. This is because of tiny fundamental changes which cascade into larger problems because of those tiny changes. You can fight back. For me, this no longer makes the game scary. The game's story is only there if you read the notes. Secondly, it's difficult to find all the notes and put them in order because of the non-linear nature of the game. So for some people, and unfortunately one of them was me, you will not find some of the most important notes in the game which explain some of the most important parts of this game's story. This video will not spoil the Bunker's story, which is actually good by the way, so don't worry about that. The problem I had is I couldn't find any of it, so I couldn't get into it. Which sucks. Again, there are people out there who like this style of storytelling. Not me. This game is like several consecutive baseball bats to the face for me. But that more or less is one, sort of two, of the big issues in this game. But another part of what makes frictional games scary are their themes. These central ideas which can make you think about things for maybe months, even years. Because of Amnesia the Dark Descent, one of my biggest fears in my entire life now is memory loss. The idea that you can literally lose who you are is the most terrifying thing I can think of. And I don't know, maybe it's because I didn't find all those notes, but the only thing I can hear from the bunker is that war is bad. That's kinda fucking boring. And it's also too real, which is weird to say, so let me explain. No game by Frictional has had a very human antagonist to it. Like, they do have them, right? Don't mishear me or anything. Penumbra had Red, Amnesia had a bunch, like Alexander, but there's bigger fish in the sea. Penumbra has this completely alien hive mind. Amnesia has the Shadow. The Bunker has war. There's no moral implications to think about in a war is bad theme, like there is in the idea of, if you did something horrible but you can't remember doing it, should you be punished? Are you guilty of a crime if someone took away all of your memories of said crime? Now that's something to think about. The problem with war as a central theme is that I know it's bad. People suck. I'm aware. Getting shot at in the pillbox, I guess that's cool. I don't care though. There's nothing to think about. I'm aware that this stuff is horrible. I had a middle school history class about it. I had to make a diorama of World War I trenches with little green army men and stuff. Even the big thing, the prank, which I won't go into specifics about if you do want to play the game, is very human. It's just bad, just horrible, full stop. There's nothing to think about. I'm not going to think about that story beat for like 5 years and develop a phobia about it like I did with The Dark Descent. I'm pretty sure A Machine for Pigs also talked about World War I, but the way they talked about it was magnitudes more interesting. It was all about asking the question, what if you knew it was going to happen, and you could stop all of that suffering by simply ending life sooner? I'm thinking about it right now. I'm thinking about A Machine for Pigs in a video about the bunker because there's nothing there. It's really rough talking about this because I know there are people out there who think war is scary, because it is scary. I'm not taking that away from war, it is scary. But it's scary in the same way if you were driving in the snow and your car starts to skid. You're like, oh fuck, here I go. There's nothing to unpack. War just sucks. Every question or idea you can pull from a war theme has very obvious answers which boil down to, yep, it happened, it sucked, it was horrible. We have interviews from people who have lived through it, and pretty universally they all say, yep, it fucking sucked. Your friends die all around you. That's horrible. And in the context of a video game, it's just not scary. I'm not frightened by it. So let's recap really quick. The game's not scary, the story's not scary, and the theme isn't scary. And it doesn't need to be if the game is good. What about the gameplay? I don't think Resident Evil 2 is scary, and I played through that game 4 fucking times. So what about all that stuff they were talking about with high levels of replayability due to roguelike features in the game? Items are randomly placed, the map is sort of non-linear, all the codes are different. What about that? Well, what's the name of this video? You know what's about to happen. Let's talk about something called artificial replayability. Now this is going to be a very hot opinion that I'm about to say. In the state I played the game, It would have been more replayable if there was no randomness at all. In fact, there is a locker room right next to the safe room. If that room didn't exist, the game would be better. I fucking hate this room. This room fucking sucks. And there's a major reason for this. About half the items you need to unlock most of your options in the game are in these fucking lockers. Why? There is an entire map for you to explore which these items could have been placed through, so you have to go everywhere. But instead, the places which these items could have been have codes to go get the items back at the locker room. Why? For what purpose does this need to occur? The only reason this functions, and in my opinion it doesn't function well, but the only reason it functions is because all of the codes are randomly generated every new game. So let's put it into a different perspective. If the codes weren't randomized, and you either remembered them from a previous playthrough or looked them up, you would have access to about 50 to 60% of the unique items in the game. That is laughable. So maybe you're going, well, good thing that isn't the case. But here's the thing. In the situation that the player is good-natured and is doing a second playthrough of the game and either remembers the codes or looks them up because they don't want to do the same exact thing they did in the last playthrough, suddenly their playthrough is entirely different. That's why I said without randomness, the game would be more replayable. Let's use a hypothetical really quick, using two different games, Amnesia the Bunker and Risk of Rain 2. We're going to boil this down to the barest essentials just to understand what's going on. In the bunker, you have the lockers, and in Risk of Rain, you have chests. In Roar, to open the chest, you need money. Now what's important about this is what you need, which is money, will always stay the same. In order to get that money, you will always need to do the same thing. Kill monsters. What's interesting about chests is not what you do to open them, but what's inside, which will always be random. This item is always going to change your playstyle slightly. Sometimes it's going to change it a lot. The reason chests are fun is because you don't know what you're going to get, and what you do get is always going to change how you play. The fun part isn't the money. In the bunker, you know what you're going to get from the locker because you can see inside the locker, and how you open the locker always remains the same. You need to find the code. The code, however, is always different, which means you always need to do the same exact thing of going through the map to find the code to always get the same exact item from inside the locker. In playthrough 1, I go through the map to find the code for Lavel's locker. I get the gas mask from the locker. In playthrough 2, I go through the map to find the code for Lavel's locker. I get the gas mask from the locker. In playthrough 3, do you get it yet? Let's do the same thing but for Risk of Rain. In run 1, I kill monsters to acquire money and open the chest. I get a hoopoe feather. In run 2, I kill monsters to acquire money and open the chest. I get a soldier syringe. That's the important part. It's different. That's the reason it's good. My playthrough is different in Roar because of what's in the chest. In the bunker, my playthrough is forced to remain the same because the path to acquire what's in the locker and what's in the locker itself remains the same. Ironically, if the codes remained the same, my second playthrough would look different because now I have the gas mask before entering any part of the map. This is how Resident Evil 2 works, and because of that, every playthrough after the first were entirely different because I knew locker codes, safe codes, I knew how to solve most puzzles and where to get the items to solve those puzzles. My route through the map was different, the items I was carrying were different, my inventory size was different. And on top of that, I was faster. Way faster. That's why I like Resident Evil 2. Things remain the same, and I was allowed to get significantly better because of it. In Amnesia the Bunker, that's just not possible. With what is made random in the game, the variables which get changed, there is not enough difference to constitute a change in gameplay and will actually force you to rigidly follow the same path you did before, making each of your playthroughs the same. And it doesn't help that the optimal path through the bunker has you entering each area in the same order, no matter the playthrough. Even on Shellshock. We'll talk about that game mode later though. Let's do another thought experiment. You're playing a game. It's a hiking game. This hiking game has 4 different trails for you to walk through, and let's say each trail is significantly different from the others with different gameplay quirks. Like one you have to climb a cliff, and for another you have to cross a river. When you finish the hiking trail, you beat the game. So if we were to draw it out from beginning to end, this is what the game would look like. You start in one location, and you can take 4 unique paths to get to the end. From a replayability perspective, you can play through this game 4 times without significant diminishing returns on gameplay. You can play through it more, but then you're just playing through the same thing at that point. But let's say instead this hiking game didn't actually let you choose between the 4 trails. The game puts the trails together linearly so they would look like this. The game is far longer now, but you still experience all the same things you would from before, but now in one playthrough instead of 4. This isn't a bad thing. The replayability is down, yes, but the game is longer in a single go. It's pretty much essentially the same, right? But what if this hypothetically different hiking game also marketed itself as being replayable, but all it did was let you play through each trail once in any order you wanted? You're still playing through the exact same things, but now in a different order. The question is this: does this constitute enough of a change to say that the game is replayable? For me, the answer would be no. I've already played through all the different parts. Doing it in a different order doesn't change the individual parts. Obviously, what I'm trying to get at is that this is how Amnesia the Bunker markets its replayability. It's definitely more complex, I'll give it that. Where you can find items like grenades or bullets are going to be different. It also might be the case that you will have different items like a gas mask or lighter when you go into an area. But for me, that's still not enough of a difference. There are already significant diminishing returns when you play through the game a second time. The gun always shoots bullets. It doesn't really matter if you find them in a drawer or below a bed. The grenades always explode, so it doesn't really matter where you find those either. Gas is always used for the generator, so it doesn't matter if they're on a shelf or in a closet. This is what I mean when I say artificial replayability. Things are changed to give off the impression that the game is replayable, but the changes don't build up to much. Gameplay, for the most part, remains the same. I shoot, blow up, or hide from the monster, grab the progression item in the area, then I proceed to the next one. It's not like Risk of Rain 2, where suddenly enemies explode when I kill them, or hitting them makes them arc electricity to other enemies. I deal with the monster in the same ways depending on which I have more of, bullets or grenades. I deal with rats the same way too, which we'll talk about those later. At the end of the day, the game markets itself as replayable, but my most recent playthrough doesn't feel any different from the first. It honestly kind of felt worse, but that's not the game's fault. I was just no longer scared of the monster. I did end up playing through the game on Shellshock Difficulty, which was added in the Halloween update. I was really hoping that this game mode would change the game for me. It had all the changes that seemed like responses to the criticism I had for the bunker, which I previously mentioned. I thought that the game was going to starve me of resources. I thought that it was going to make the monster a real threat. I'm happy to say that for the first hour, this was mostly true. Shellshock Difficulty takes away your gun. That means shooting the monster is now out of the question. Not that it would matter, because shooting the monster now only stuns him instead of making him run and hide. These things sound great, and on top of that, the lockers are now randomized. They're found in different parts of the map, not just the locker room. So you need to find both the code and the locker. 2 for 2. Now this is the part where I knock it all down. The game's still a cakewalk. I had too much gas, I had too many grenades, and by the end, I had a full revolver of bullets on the hardest difficulty in the game. There are certain changes which seem interesting from a cursory view, but after almost 5 seconds are negated entirely. For example, you have the safe room. Not so safe anymore. The iron doors are now wood.
Drake? What?
This means if you're being chased by the monster, this room is no longer a haven for you. Seems like a great change to add tension. The problem is the generator room is still safe. It's got an iron door, you can lock it. The generator room and the safe room are literally in the exact same spot. That means at the end of the day, there is no point to making the safe room not safe. And when it comes to the monster himself, due to the strange abundance of explosives, I was still repeatedly bombing this motherfucker into oblivion. The locker randomization was a weird one though. Taking away the gun, putting it into a locker, and spewing it randomly into the map does feel like a good idea, but in my playthrough, that gun got put into the locker room. And due to the randomization of items and just straight up not finding the lighter, my gameplay was forced into rigidly using the same exact solutions to every problem. There was no variance, nothing interesting occurred. Is the monster on my screen? Blow him up or hide. I thought the hiding would at least be scary too, but because of the booby traps around the map, it's likely the monster ends up blowing himself up if I don't.
This fucking moron.
Are there rats? Jump past them and heal, or throw some meat, which by the way isn't consistent. Ironically, jumping past and healing is more consistent. It is how I dealt with them 50% of the time. And one more thing comes from Shellshock mode. Fuses. They stop power from going to specific areas until you find a fuse to connect that area to the generator. This is another one of those pointless additions. There are more fuses than locations in the game. That means when you walk into an area and loot it, you will find the fuse. The next area you go to will now have power, depending on if you bring the fuse with you when you go there. For me, this literally didn't fucking matter because I didn't bother to turn on the generator except for when I had to. I still connected all the fuses, but that's only because you have to do that to beat the game. And when I put in the arsenal one, I just decided to do all of them at once. Fuses felt more like a time waster and another item clogging up my inventory, not anything important. So in the end, Shellshock didn't fix the game for me. All it did was heighten certain issues or showcase different problems I didn't even know the game had. I was hoping playing through Shellshock would stop me from making the video. Instead, it showed me even more problems. There are smaller issues that this game has, which I now want to talk about, starting off with the non-spoilery ones and then moving on to the bigger stuff, so when that happens I'll pop this up on screen so you know when to skip. With our first gripe, the fucking rats. They're annoying, not scary, and kind of pissed me off the entire time I had to deal with them. They're not bad in conception. I can see a world where smaller enemies which block off passage and eat into resources work. I just don't think that they were implemented correctly. I also had a horrible moment with them, which is probably why I don't like them that much. I was in an area trying to get to the end because there's an item there I need to get, and there's a bunch of rats in here. Now, to be honest, the way I was dealing with rats was either blowing them up with grenades, or just bee-hopping over them, getting bit, running away, and then healing. The problem I had here was I jumped over the rats. There were more rats, so I jumped over them too, but for some reason they never stopped chasing me. They kept chasing me and biting me, and I had to keep healing until I just didn't have any more healing items. It got to the point where I was in the room, with the item I needed to progress, stuck on a table with the rats below me, and I couldn't run because of how damaged I was. I ended up having to kill myself. I just jumped into the ocean of rats below me, and I was like, take me. That's never a good feeling to have in a game, knowing that you're trapped and you have to start over because you think something in the game code fucked up somewhere. Like in this moment, I wasn't scared. I didn't feel like I had created the situation for myself. It just felt like for some reason the rat aggression never turned off. I was pissed because I thought something in the code ruined the fun. So yeah, the rats don't feel like they work right. I've jumped over them and not gotten bit. Most of the times I do get bit. I don't know why. Most of the time they give up chasing you after a few seconds of running, until for some reason, they don't. They're just not consistent. The next thing is inventory space. I found that the way the inventory system works almost tends to shoot itself in the foot. There are only two items in the game which you can't really live without, the flashlight and the gun. The flashlight lets you see, and the gun is a big loud shooty thing which can solve most issues for you if you simply don't care about the monster knowing where you are. The problem is there are a few items in the game which either act as tension builders or open up gameplay for you massively. The gas mask is a useful item for you to have when you're surrounded by gas tanks or are carrying some gas grenades, while the lighter opens up your interaction with the map tenfold. But they both take up an inventory slot. Due to the fact that certain items like grenades are just better in almost every way, I tended to not carry them because I could just pick up a grenade instead. Even on Shellshock mode, I was never without a medkit, so if my way was blocked by gas, I could just jump through and heal. The item which probably had the worst run due to the inventory system was the stopwatch. This thing is fucking amazing. On your first playthrough, if you carry this around, it is a treasure trove of anxiety. You will watch your time on your generator run out, and on a first playthrough, that will freak you out. But because it takes up an inventory slot, you will throw it away to be able to grab better, more useful items. My personal prescription would be to give certain items like the stopwatch their own little space in your inventory like bullets so they don't take up slots. You could tweak overall inventory space to be smaller if you needed to. Overall, when it comes to the inventory, certain items would be cool to have, but the problem is every single one of them besides the flashlight and the gun are outclassed by a single grenade. And this isn't to say that grenades are overpowered, it's just that grenades are grenades. They blow stuff up, and in the bunker, due to game design, most stuff in your way requires blowing up. Another issue, which is far subtler but really reared its ugly head on subsequent playthroughs, is the game doesn't have any puzzles. If I wanted to stretch the definition of puzzle, then it would have like one puzzle, the follow the wire puzzle. If you include the boss battle, the game has two puzzles. For an Amnesia game, that's not a lot of puzzles. In The Dark Descent, there are so many puzzles. Some are funny in how simple they are, like a match the shape puzzle, but then there are puzzles like in Rebirth, where you follow instructions to make a tank shell. In Penumbra, there's a puzzle which involves getting a number code from Morse code. That was the coolest thing in the first game for me. Hands down. There's nothing like that in the bunker. Most of the game is grabbing items to open up locations like keys or tools, and then it's just a matter of finding the code. Sometimes the power needs to be on in an area, other times it doesn't matter. What's important is there aren't any brain teasers. Nothing makes you really think. There's nothing to solve. Every part of the game is go here, open something up, acquire an item or a code to open something else up to acquire an item. Repeat until game finishes. Besides the soldiers' quarters, there's never a complication to this loop like a puzzle which halts your progress besides the monster himself. I like the puzzles in the other games. I like my horror puzzle games. It's just unfortunate that the bunker isn't one. So, this is where I'm going to get a little spoilery. The Romans Tunnel section of the game is so overhyped and so anticlimactic, it's just not scary at all. The threat down here is that an insane man with a trench gun is walking around blasting everything to shit, and I have to assume the point is to have him vaporize you. He's blind, so it's meant to be this tense stealth section where you see figures in the weird mist that covers the area, trying not to draw his attention. The problem is, 0.5 seconds after he appears on my screen, no matter what playthrough, I shoot him in the fucking head. And he's just a normal dude, so he dies instantly. The monster isn't even allowed down here, so the next 5 to 10 minutes of gameplay are completely risk-free, with no tension whatsoever. And the game lets you save right before coming in here because I have to assume the developers were worried people would be annoyed of backtracking if they died. Suffice to say, a guy with a gun, when you also have a gun, in a location the monster can't reach, when you saved 2 minutes ago, isn't all that scary of an experience. That's just a personal thought, though. The last thing that I really think wasn't good was the boss fight at the end. Most of the games have this. They're never good. It's not good here either. It's really infuriating because it feels like a puzzle to kill the monster, and it is, but the monster gets like a double jump and will straight up fucking teleport to ledges if you shoot the ground out from under him. I have no clue what you're supposed to fucking do here. Like, I know now, but I spent unironically 45 minutes here trying to drop this fucker in the pit, and it wasn't working. I've seen other playthroughs. I know you can do it without the stuffed animal toy. But one of the other playthroughs I watched, which was Joseph Anderson's, I don't even think he knew what the fuck happened, because I sure as shit didn't.
Okay, well, now what? Wait, what? What?
This part of the game, I was stuck here trying to kill the monster for so long that eventually a friend had to tell me what to do, which is build out like it's fucking Fortnite, which I did, and then that stupid fucking ending where the Germans come. That shit's stupid, war is bad, I get it. So, after an entire game, where about halfway through I was ruminating on how little fun I was having, that ending was really the nail in the coffin. Also, just a little addition to this, I think they made it impossible to kill the monster on Shellshock mode with the stuffed animal toy, so you have to do it the hard way. But then, why would they still give you the stuffed animal toy? This shit pissed me off more than anything in my playthrough. But that's mostly everything, without getting supremely nitpicky and anal about things. It's just really unfortunate that this game didn't work for me. I saw the trailer when it came out. I was excited beyond belief for a new Amnesia game so soon after the last one. I was cautiously excited when they had talked about how the game was different every playthrough and the monster had complex AI. And then the game came out and everyone was saying it was actually good, and now there's a bunch of video essays saying the game's great, and I don't like it. I really wish I did. I genuinely wish I enjoyed the fuck out of this game, but it's not an Amnesia game. It doesn't feel like Amnesia, and that sucks. It is also very funny. There's a video about how this game isn't Amnesia, but is instead like Penumbra. And it's funny because in that video, they talk about how you can kill the dogs in the first Penumbra game, and that shit sucked so much ass. Like, the game is good, but oh my god, the dog killing was just atrocious. You would just stand on a barrel and like whack the dogs until they died, and you'd do that for like 20 minutes until the entire area was clear. It was funny. It was very funny. It was bad, but, you know. Amnesia is a very special franchise to me. Hey, I won't lie. I bought the game because of PewDiePie. I was like 11. I bought it on a storefront called Desura because Steam wasn't exactly that big back then. I didn't even know Steam existed. I would play custom stories and all that stuff. Amnesia was my first childhood game besides like Minecraft and Gmod. Now, it shouldn't have been. Again, I have a fear of memory loss because of that game now, but it is a genuinely amazing game. I have played through it multiple times as a child and an adult. I've played through A Machine for Pigs multiple times. I liked that game too, even though it's not the most well received. And, oh, would you look at that? How'd that get in here? Anyways, Amnesia the Bunker doesn't have much going on. The game isn't scary enough for me to have a fun time playing it. The game isn't replayable enough to warrant a second playthrough, and the story isn't good enough to keep me thinking about it after I've turned it off. The only reason I've kept thinking about this game is because of the concept of artificial replayability, which has been stuck in my head since I played Deathloop and came back to haunt me when I played The Bunker. Now, I am glad that, as far as critical reception goes, this game has been well received. After Rebirth, Frictional definitely needed a dub. It seems that the game has been successful for them, and I hope they learn from the mistakes they made in doing something new. If by a random chance the devs ever watch this video, I want them to know that I think that they are master craftsmen when it comes to stories, and I commend them for trying to do something new. Frictional definitely has the talent to make masterpieces like they've done in the past. I hope Amnesia the Bunker is a stepping stone to their next 10 out of 10. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, do all that YouTube stuff if you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.